Who's coming up?
A guy who loves to talk fantasy baseball.
3-2.
This is Full Count Fantasy Baseball.
In a year that has been so improbable, the impossible has happened.
Here is your improbable host, Dean Millard.
Presented by Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports. Get in the game where you own the game.
Hello there, and welcome to a very special edition of Full Count Fantasy Baseball. Man, it is an exciting day for myself and for everybody at Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports, and specifically Ultimate Fantasy League Baseball. This show presented by Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports, and we have so much to tell you about with them. So much going on: hockey, baseball, football, basketball, more and more golf down the road, you name it. The most realistic fantasy platform is here, and it's UFF Sports. And this show proudly broadcast on Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network, your one-stop fantasy sports shop, and we'll give you all the details about that as we roll along on the program. But we like to start out with an early game question of the day.
This is a serious message. Peace and love. Peace and love.
And we will bring up the correct day here on the old Major League Baseball schedule. We got the White Sox in Cleveland playing a double dip today. First game starts in just over an hour. Lots of early games, as always, on the Thursday schedule. So there's a look at it. And the White Sox-Cleveland double dip is what I'm kind of focusing on. Who do the White Sox match up better against, Tampa or Houston? The Astros, they're rolling. They're only 4 back of Tampa for the best record in the AL. The White Sox will finish third and either face second place Houston or the Rays if they fall out of first. As for the wild card, the Jays fell out yesterday, now a half game back of New York. Boston in the top wild card spot with a 2-game cushion. In the NL, the Cards have a comfy 4.5 game lead over slumping Cincy and the Phillies, who have won 2 in a row. But the question I want to know is, when you look at the White Sox, who do you think, if you're a White Sox fan, who do you match up better against, Tampa or Houston? Would love to hear your thoughts. We'll tell you how you can reach us and get a hold of us as we roll along through the program. But I have to tell you and have to say very, very big thank you to Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports, the title sponsor of this program, which will be changing to Inside UFLB very shortly. But this is the most realistic and highest stakes fantasy platform out there. It's on the blockchain. It is next level. It's an investment for a lot of people. And prize pools are massive. I mean, the football prize pool, UFAFL, started at over $200,000. It's just insane. Our hockey league has already crowned 2 champions. Basketball auctions are this weekend. This weekend. Check out www.UFF Sports for the details. Baseball auctions in the Ultimate Fantasy League Baseball will be in November. So this will be the next best thing to owning an actual Major League Baseball team. And our guest today, Ian Kinsler, is going to tell you all about it. And this is how you can get in touch with us.
You talking to me? You talking to me? You talking to me? Well, then who the hell else are you talking? You talking to me? Well, I'm the only one here.
Follow me on Twitter at Duck Millard if you'd like. You can also follow Ultimate Fantasy League Baseball at the UFLB. Full Count Fantasy Baseball at gmail.com or UFSN at UFFsports.com is how you can email, and you can get a hold of the Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network. And you can find past episodes at fullcountfantasybaseball.ca, and more information, including what's happening with basketball this weekend, UFFsports.com. Okay, so this is going to be a little bit of a different show. We are going to get to our headlines. How do you spell relief? That'll also be a segment that we'll do. Most of it is going to be about picking up guys for your playoff runs, semifinals or finals that you're in right now. Baseball Thunderdome, a couple of second basemen that our digital NFT Ian Kinsler looked up to as a kid. Waiver wire wins in Prospect Peak, as well as Rule Your League, will also come into play. But when we get to headlines, we have one very, very special headline to tell you about, and that is UFF Sports announces its first Baseball Digital NFT World Series champion with the Boston Red Sox, Ian Kinsler, and he is going to join us in just a few minutes. So very pumped about this. UFF Sports is amazing. I'm so honored to be head of baseball for UFF Sports, and the team around me has been working so hard. Just a terrific job by Matt Soren, who's our director of competition. He played with Ian Kinsler on the Israel Olympic team. So great job to bring him into the family as our first digital athlete NFT and ambassador. I believe Ian Kinsler also played in the minors with Gerald Smiley, who has joined the fold with us as well. And Gerald will have some news as well with some more former players joining us. So great stuff going on. Brian Hernandez is heading up the scouting department for all you baseball scouts that want to get into it. It is going to be a lot of fun. So if you want to read the full story, you can head to www.uffsports.com. Just click on the read more button and boom, you will get the story on Ian Kinsler becoming the first digital athlete NFT on the UFFS platform. So very excited for Ian to join us, and very excited to bring you the interview that we're going to have with Ian momentarily. I think you are really, really going to like this. But Ian will be a terrific ambassador. I can't wait to see his NFT minted. He'll also be suiting up in the Legends League, which will be mind-blowing for a lot of people. There's two parts to this. There's the realism and the high stakes of fantasy on the blockchain from a fantasy baseball perspective, and how just it mirrors almost everything. And then there's the players getting rewarded for their fantasy play. So we're going to touch on all of this as we go. But for a guy like Ian Kinsler to have a great career, or anybody else, or current players signing up and getting rewarded for their fantasy play, for their careers, I mean, it is just simply awesome. The realism it takes, and then, you know, the guys getting to face whoever they want in the Legends League. Man, it's so exciting for former players, for franchise owners. And now I present to you a conversation I had earlier this week with a man who patrolled second base for 14 years in Major League Baseball, Ian Kinsler. Ian Kinsler played 14 seasons in Major League Baseball. He made 4 All-Star teams, won 2 Gold Gloves as a second baseman, and received MVP votes in 4 different seasons. He's a 2-time member of the 30-30 Club, 30 homers, 30 steals in the same season, and won a World Series with the Boston Red Sox in 2018. He also hit a home run in his final at-bat, and even though he's been a second baseman his whole career, at that moment, he was hitting from the pitcher's position. Now that is a rare exclusive club. And here's one more. Ian is now the first baseball digital athlete NFT in the UFF Sports ecosystem. Ian, welcome to the family. Congratulations. And how does that feel?
Now being a part of it, I think it's a great place to be. I think that this realm, this fantasy baseball and the ultimate fantasy baseball is as close as you can get to the game. So, to be a part of it and be the first, I think is pretty cool.
Our motto is never stop playing, as you are hashtag unretired in the digital athlete space. So you will be playing in the Legends League against some of the best players of all time. What do you think that's going to feel to see your digital athlete back in action?
I think it's going to be great as long as there's no muscles to pull and, I don't have to do any running or anything like that. I think it's great because the injury risk has gone way up with retirement. But, being a part of it, I think after the retirement, and then obviously seeing your stats still in play and your in play, I think is a really cool feeling to have, and hopefully a lot of other players join, ex-players and current players, and the owners of these teams can definitely be a little bit more interactive with the players of the league of MLB, and lead to some really cool interaction.
So when you step up to the plate in our Simulation Fantasy Legends League, what pitcher in all of baseball's almost 150-year history would you like to face, and why?
What pitcher? I mean, the first guy that comes to mind is Nolan Ryan. The strikeout king. The guy was ahead of his time with velocity and running that four-seamer up in the zone, like you see guys that are throwing high velocity fastballs, and then obviously the big curveball. I think for me it would be a great matchup just because velocity never really bothered me, and the big curveball never really bothered me. I knew you started throwing the changeup and everything, but it was really like the sinkers and the stuff that ran into me because I stayed on top of the plate were the pitches that made me a little indecisive. So, being able to stand in the box against Nolan Ryan would probably be the one guy that I miss.
UFF Sports is revolutionary in the fact that we are getting current and past athletes involved, so they get rewarded financially thanks to their digital athlete NFT participating in fantasy gameplay. That is definitely next level stuff. So what would be your message to other athletes out there, past or present, about getting their NFT minted and getting in the game?
Yeah, I think it's just a great place to interact with the game and stay involved, and it's so realistic. It goes to what is actually happening, and you see guys play fantasy football on CBS or Yahoo or whatever, and you see fantasy baseball leagues kind of the same, but it's just a shell of what is available. And when you get involved in this, it's they follow all the same rules, and you got draft picks, and you got scouts, and you got you can have a whole front office. So to be a part of something like that, I think is relatable for ex players and players that are currently playing. So that would kind of be my pitch, is that it's just so close to the real thing that there's it just makes for so much more fun.
We are talking only 30 franchises and full rosters, just like when you played. Well, 26-man rosters will have a 40-man list, and a full minor league system is being planned, as well as a massive scouting platform. What would you say to a potential owner out there that is looking at getting into this game?
It's as close as it gets, and that was kind of what drew me to it, is that being in the front office with the Padres, and trying to understand the ins and outs of everything, and the moves, and the whatever it may be, all the different rules that apply to off the field in baseball, all apply in this fantasy league. So to be able to know the rules better and to be able to be a part of it, I think that was what was attractive for me, is to try to see how closely and how similar the two really are is crazy. And I think a lot of players, a lot of ex-players, and a lot of fans that just want to see and feel what it's really like to run a real major league team, I think are going to really enjoy it. And I think as a former player and somebody who is playing day in and day out, I think I was a little bit at fault of saying we just need to get Max Scherzer or whatever, and you just want the best players on your team. You want to win the most games, and every game is super important to win. But when you look at the big scheme of things, there's a lot more that goes into it. And that's what's cool about this, is that you have the opportunity to, scout players and do everything off the field and develop a franchise, and that's what's really, really interesting to me.
How about fantasy baseball in general? I don't imagine you were a fantasy baseball player when you were playing Major League Baseball, but before you got there, did you play at all?
I did one time. I didn't really play it growing up. I tried it one year, and I was in junior college. And I played the full year. And I just remember thinking, like, man, this is a lot of time. Like, I gotta check the starting pitching every day. I gotta check to see who's taking a day off, or if somebody just got injured, or whatever it may be. And I loved it. It was something that I loved. I never did it again, just because time consuming, and trying to be an athlete and being a student at the same time was time consuming in itself, and trying to deal with fantasy baseball on the side was probably just too much. But I really enjoyed it, and being able to look into something every single day. And that's the cool thing about baseball, is that they play 162 games plus the postseason, so there's always something going on, and there's always a new move to be made. So fantasy baseball to me is the most detailed and the most time consuming, something that you really need to focus on, and that's why I appreciate it.
Ian, you won a World Series in 2018 with the Boston Red Sox, one of the most iconic franchises in all of sports. I'd imagine you won the World Series a lot growing up in the backyard. What was that moment like, and was it everything you dreamed of?
I mean, it's, when I get that question, it's just the hardest feeling, just because you're at the pinnacle of your sport, and you've played your sport since you were a little kid. I mean, baseball I played since I was, 8 years old or whatever. So to reach the pinnacle and win was the most memorable thing that you could ask for in that profession and in professional baseball. I had two opportunities before we won it in Boston and Texas, and we came close, but we didn't quite get there. And those seasons were so memorable, and being part of a winning team is something special. Those all those guys, you pick up a phone, call them, and it's like you really never miss a step, never missed a day. And it's the same way in Boston. Once you experience something like that with a group of guys, it just never goes away. And finally be on top and to finally win the whole thing was something special, and I was glad to be a part of it.
You hit a home run in your final Major League at bat. It is quite a story that you can tell as far as final at-bat stories, and it gets even cooler as you tell it. Can you take us through what that moment was like and all the crazy scenarios that put you in a very exclusive club?
Yeah, I remember a lot about it. I started the game on the bench. That last year in San Diego was a little rough, kind of getting towards the end of my career. Wasn't in the starting lineup as often as I had been in the past, and I was on the bench, and we were getting beat pretty badly by the Rays, by Tampa Bay, and Andy Green asked me if I'd like to pitch, and I straight up no. I had no interest in pitching. That was not on my bucket list. And he continued to say, "Hey, we kind of need you right now. It'd be nice to give the bullpen a little rest." So, of course, I took the ball and went in there and, threw an inning, and crazy enough, the pitcher's spot was due up the next inning, and I was able to hit one out of the park and get a good fastball and put a good swing on it. Coming back to the dugout, I was like, oh, okay, so this is what Babe Ruth feels like. Now it's like, this is what Shohei Ohtani feels like.
I don't know if there's anybody who has hit their last at-bat home run as a pitcher. Like, you have to be the only one.
Yeah, that's the other thing that's kind of weird. Looking back on it, is I got the lineup card or whatever, and I got a little P next to my name, which is the only time ever in my career, and I happened to hit a home run on my last at bat. So I have homered as a pitcher, yes.
Ian, you were considered one of the best second basemen of your generation. You will get to play in the Legends League with Ultimate Fantasy League Baseball. Who are some of the other legends from the second base position that you looked up to or tried to model your game after that will also end up in the Legends League with you?
Man, there's so many guys. Obviously, like late Joe Morgan comes to mind. I grew up in the 90s, and Sports Center, you know, it wasn't like MLB Network today where you see every highlight of every game every day, and you see the ins and outs of everything that's going on, and you're able to capture every moment. When I was growing up, Sports Center, you know, you had the top 10 plays. You'd have a little baseball tonight or something every once in a while. You get to see some baseball highlights, but the guy that I really remember just constantly making the top 10 or the best plays of the day, along with King Griffey Jr., was Roberto Olimar. You know, making sliding plays in the outfield and twisting and turning on the ground and throwing guys out, switch hitting, running the bases, just an electric type player. That's someone that I definitely watched, paid attention to, and then Craig Bigeo was also a guy. He constantly was just getting hit by pitches, doing whatever it took, but also had the skills. He was just full of tenacity. He was just a hard-nosed player. Obviously started out as a catcher, ended up at second base, and then towards the end of his career played in the outfield a little bit. But you know, guys were guys that I really respected and watched when I was a kid.
Ian, there are only 30 franchises available in Ultimate Fantasy League Baseball. Unless Major League Baseball expands, then so will we. But what would be your final message to anybody thinking of getting into this? You've played the game at the highest level. Now you're in the front office of the San Diego Padres. Why should somebody consider buying a franchise in Ultimate Fantasy League Baseball?
I mean, this league is encompassing, and if you ever dreamed of being in control of a major league franchise, like, this is as close as you're going to get. To be able to see all of those aspects of the game, kind of rolled into one. I think, personally, I think the name needs to be changed. It's not necessarily fantasy. Like, it takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of work, but it also just puts you closer to the game than I think people are used to. And, if you're interested in that, and I think that's super interesting to a lot of fans who are interested in the sport of baseball or whatever it may be, that would be my recommendation, is that it just brings you closer to the game than anything else.
Thank you very much, Ian. Franchise auctions will take place November 5th to 7th. If you would like more information, please email info@uflb@gmail.com or visit www.uffsports.com. If you missed any of that interview, you can check it out in its entirety at UFSN, our YouTube channel, Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network. We have the full interview up there. We also have the interviews edited down into specific segments and clips as well. Maybe you just want to hone in on that incredible last at-bat story from the pitcher's position, hitting a home run. Or maybe you want to find out from an ex-player and a guy who's currently in management's point of view just how realistic and spot on this league is. Whatever it is, check it out, UFSN on YouTube, and you can find out all the details. It is a huge weekend for us, a massive weekend. As mentioned already, we have hockey and football going, basketball franchise auctions this weekend, and we have big plans on Innovation Island. You got to check this out. It's our virtual island. It's where UFBA auctions will be taking place and so many more events. Check out at UFF Sports on Twitter for all the details, or at UFS Official on Instagram. Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports on Facebook. And you can email as well, Dean_UFLB@UFFsports.com. I'll hook you up with all the details, but we are going to have a lot of fun on Innovation Island this weekend with some NBA franchise auctions. All right, let's get back to some fantasy baseball. Still buzzing over the Ian Kinsler news. Can't wait to see him take on Nolan Ryan in the Legends League. And you know what? I would kind of like to know where Walker Buehler went. Like, we are now reliving the Buehler. And I hope I don't need to tell you what movie that's from. But where is the guy people were pumping up for a Cy Young Award. Where is that guy? I don't know. He's been lit up lately. 16 earned runs in his 4 September starts. He gave up just 13 in 16 innings during, in 16 starts during July and August. In 2 of his last 4 starts, he's barely gone 3 innings. A lot of talk about a career high in innings, just over 195. And that talk has led to more talk about dead arm late in the season. He might have 2 more starts before the regular campaign wraps up, but it depends how Dave Roberts wants to set up his rotation for either a 1-game playoff for the division title with San Francisco or a 1-game wildcard, or both. You know, they might play San Fran to get into the division lead, lose that, and then have to play a wildcard game. And then you're right back against another team. Well, it would be San Francisco, because it'd be weird. The 2 best records in baseball would be playing in the divisional series, not the championship series. But that's the case that the Dodgers are facing. So they've got to get Buehler figured out. And they've got to get figured out what's going on with Cody Bellinger as well. Jesse Winker also on the IL with Cody Bellinger. So big guys down the stretch hurting you in fantasy because they're not playing. Just when you thought it was safe to get some big nuts back in your lineup, they're out again. At least with Winker, you're optimistic about him regaining his all-star form. Who knows when Bellinger will return? But they're both out again. Winker beamed this week, landed him back on the IL with a rib injury, and Bellinger also is out with a rib fracture. Here's a question. If you are in a brand new league next year, where do you draft Cody Bellinger? Like, this is 2 seasons in a row, and Brian Hernandez, scouting director with UFLB, and I were talking about him trying to rework his swing the last 2 years, and it's just been not good for the Dodgers, although they did win a World Series, and it's not good for fantasy owners. If you're in a keeper league, do you keep Cody Bellinger? Depends on certainly what else you have going in the roster. Stay away from the streams today. That's another headline. Sometimes the best stream option is to take none of them. Don't grab a guy and throw him in just to add a few more Ks or inning pitch at the expense of blowing up your ERA or WHIP. And, you know, that's when your pickings are slim, which I think they are today. They're just not many good options. The Brewers, Adrian Hauser, likely available in your league, takes on the Cardinals, who are surging. Madison Bumgarner of the D-backs takes on the Braves, who are fighting off the Phillies, and they'll be a tough out. So not really sure that it's a great idea to be grabbing a streamer today. And Wander Franco will join the Rays on Friday. Their superstar shortstop is wrapping up his AAA rehab stint today. If all goes well, he'll be back in Tampa's lineup by the weekend. After a strong August, he's been sidelined since September 10th with a hamstring injury. He hit .331 with an on-base percentage of .382 and a .485 slugging and an OPS of .867, 3 home runs and 19 RBIs. That was before he was sidelined. He was really cruising in August. So if you're in the semifinal or the final this week, or next week you're in the final and you've called him up or you picked him up, you are in luck because it looks like Franco will be wandering around the infield for Tampa Bay down the stretch. All right, how do you spell relief? This week, I'm trying to look at different guys that you can pick up, and Matt Barnes of the Red Sox might be available. He's back with the Sox now after being out for 2 weeks with COVID, and he was dropped by a lot of teams in a couple of my leagues. And he was cruising with saves earlier this year, but in August, he had just 1, and he hasn't saved a game yet since he returned. Should keep your ERA low as long as he doesn't get blown up, and maybe he gets in on some holds. He's only pitched in 2 games since returning last Friday, but a guy that you might want to take a look at, possibly, to certainly help pick up some categories. I just think that there's an opportunity for you to find guys that others have given up on because maybe they needed to move on down the stretch. It's an opportunity, and that's what we're looking for today, is to give you those opportunities. Listen, if you're in the semifinals or the finals, you're not going to look for a guy who's shutting it down every night. You're looking for guys who are going to be put into positions where they can get hot or or at least just contribute. That's what you're looking for in the waiver wire at this point of the season. All right, Baseball Thunderdome. On the recommendation of Ian Kinsler, 2 second basemen he looked up to is what we'll be going with in Baseball Thunderdome. We'll also dive into waiver wire wins when we get back.
This is Full Count Fantasy Baseball,
Don't try to strike everybody out. Strikeouts are boring. Besides that, they're fascist.
presented by Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports.
Throw some ground ball. More democratic.
Get in the game, where you own the game.
Full Count Fantasy Baseball is proudly part of the Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network, your one-stop fantasy sports shop. We want to have you, if you want to talk fantasy sports, whether it's a daily, monthly, or weekly show. We've got some cool stuff now. UFAFL Nation is a must-watch. We have UFHL now tomorrow, 2 special guests on that show from Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League. And very soon we'll have Inside UFLB and more. Not just shows about our league. We want shows about all kinds of fantasy and all kinds of fantasy sports. So check it out at UFS Network on Twitter, or email UFSN at UFFsports.com, and we can get you in the game where you own the game, even from a fantasy broadcast perspective.
Welcome to another edition of Thunderdome!
You be cocky and arrogant, even when you're getting beat.
2 men enter, 1 man leaves.
Prediction? Yes, prediction.
And right now, I've got 2 men.
It's serious.
All right, today's Baseball Thunderdome, and what we do is just like the real Thunderdome, we present 2 players. Who would you take in fantasy and why? And this is on the recommendation of 2 guys that Ian Kinsler, if you missed it earlier in the show, announced as our first Baseball Digital Athlete NFT. These are the guys he looked up to. So, Baseball Thunderdome today, second base edition, is Roberto Olimar versus Craig Bigeo. And you heard Ian talk about the range that both of these guys had. It's incredible. Bigeo put his body on the line, as Ian said, taking pitches all the time. Alamar was just a clutch hitter. Both of them could track. Just an awesome matchup today of defensive and offensive studs in Baseball Thunderdome. And 2 second basemen that, as Ian Kinsler mentioned, he looked up to. I love how he mentioned he grew up in the 90s and SportsCenter didn't have highlights. Yeah, I grew up in the 80s. We didn't even have SportsCenter, man. We had like hardly any. You took what you got as far as This Week in Baseball, and that's where you got your highlights. None of this SportsCenter in the 80s. Man, now I am really dating myself. All right, let's get to waiver wire wins now. Chime in on Baseball Thunderdome. Hit me up at Duck Millard on Twitter. So the guy I'm going with right now is Jordan Montgomery of the Yankees, starting pitcher. In 3 of his last 4 starts, he has given up just 1 earned run in each of them. 23 Ks in just over 15 and a third innings pitched, and the Yankees look like they might be picking it up again. So Montgomery could be a guy you can grab. I think this week, I know this week he's making 2 starts, so if you're going into your final next week, you'd only have him for 1 most likely, unless something strange happened and he missed a start this week or something like that and then gets pushed back. But this is a guy who has helped me. I'm in the semifinal, and he's been strong as of late. As for the most added, it's all pitchers this week. Touki Toussaint of the Braves, Rowan Wick of the Cubs are the most added, and Gregory Soto and Jose Suarez of the Angels, Soto of the Tigers, are the most dropped. That was among Yahoo leagues as far as most dropped and most added players. All right, prospect peak, and we'll tell you how you can rule your league after these words.
This is Full Count Fantasy Baseball.
All right, you guys, let's listen up. We won a game yesterday. We win one today, that's 2 in a row.
Presented by Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports.
We win one tomorrow, That's called a winning streak. It has happened before.
Get in the game, where you own the game.
So let's see some hustle. Let's jack it up a little. I got a feeling things are about to turn around for us.
Full Count Fantasy Baseball presented by Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports. Whatever sport you're into, this will be the most realistic fantasy platform, I guarantee you. I mean, we have full seasons right into the bitter end, and then we have playoff drafts and a full playoff. So in baseball, if you're a wild card team, you got to win that wild card game, and then you'll get to pluck players off the roster. It's kind of like provincials. But this is to ensure that everybody has full teams in the playoffs with the most important. The marathon regular season is massive, and it will be worth a lot of money. In our football league, they started with over $200,000 as the prize pool, and these are progressive, just like it'll be in baseball and hockey. So get in the game where you own the game. Follow at UFF Sports on Twitter, and check out the website, www.uffsports.com. All right, let's get into Prospect Peak, going to the Rays this week, and why not? They seem to produce an awful lot of these guys. This is Shane Bass, starting pitcher for Tampa, made his debut this week, beating the Jays. He went 5 innings, struck out as many, only gave a couple of earned runs by way of home run. He would be a nice guy to grab for the rest of the season and next year. Definitely this guy, if you have any kind of prospect system in your league, should be gone. Or else you should be cleaning up in your league if he's not. If you're just in a regular league, though, and you can still pick guys up and keep them for next year, stash this guy. And if you're in the playoffs, stash this guy for next year and use him this year. He already had a solid outing in his debut, and Tampa's a pretty good team to bet on. So, Shane Bass, starting pitcher for Tampa. If he's out there, grab him right now for your semifinal or your final. And you can get into it and have a lot of fun. All right, final segment right now.
Smokey, this is not Nam. This is bowling. There are rules.
I don't think it taints it.
What you talking about, mister?
You're crazy. I like you. But you're crazy.
All right, on Rule Your League, I like to give you different rules that you can try in your league or guidelines to kind of live by when it comes to fantasy. And the rule I think you should have, and not necessarily like a specific rule, but a rule of categories, is there should always be negative categories. That makes sense. People that know me know I'm not a big plus-minus guy, but when you strike out, you should get a negative. When you make an error, you should get a negative. When you give up a home run, you should get a negative. There should be, not everything has to balance and be perfect, but it shouldn't always just be positives. There should be a way, especially in football, you see it, interceptions, fumbles. There should be a way for teams, if they make enough mistakes, to lose points as well. So that would be my recommendation for Rule Your League. All right, as for Weekend Watch, always want to tell you about something cool to watch this weekend, and I'm going with the Astros and the A's. I mean, Houston has a 9-game lead on the A's in the AL West. They're not going to get caught unless the bottom falls out and they lose every game. They have an 8.5 game on Seattle, but if the A's get hot and pass Seattle and get into the wild card, this could potentially be a playoff preview. I love the A's. I love the uniforms. I wasn't happy with what happened with Houston, so this will be a fun series to watch this weekend and see what the Oakland A's can do. So that will be what I will be watching this weekend. And, of course, I will be hanging out on the always fun Innovation Island as our UFBA franchise auctions will be taking place. You can find details at UFF Sports on Twitter and join the party. It's going to be awesome. Full Count Fantasy Baseball is part of the Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network. UFSN is your one-stop fantasy sports shop. Follow along on Twitter at UFS Network. Find them on YouTube, UFSN. That is where this show is proudly being broadcast. Big thanks, of course, to Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports for being the title sponsor of this program, and, of course, to Ian Kinsler. Congratulations. A World Series champion, and now the first digital athlete NFT when it comes to baseball. Welcome to the UFF Sports family, Ian, and thank you very much for being here. And thank you to everybody who tuned in today. One more piece of advice.
You be cocky and arrogant, even when you're getting beat.
And that is going to wrap things up. Thank you very much to Ian Kinsler for joining us on the program. Thank you to you as well for tuning in. You can check out more details at uffsports.com. You can also find more great shows on our YouTube channel, Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network. It's been a really fun show. Really excited about the future of UFF Sports and Ultimate Fantasy League Baseball. Read all about it. Ian Kinsler, the first baseball digital NFT. Can't wait for more of them. Thanks very much, everybody, for tuning in to the program today. Have yourself a great weekend. Ban the shift.